The conclusion of the substance unfolds like a dark tapestry, woven with threads of body horror and twisted comedy, revealing the grim realities of self-worth and the perils of self-destruction lurking within the entertainment industry. Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. Be careful if you haven't watched the movie yet, because there'll be spoilers. At the heart of this unsettling tale lies the enigmatic substance, a serum that grants the power to conjure a youthful doppelgänger. This sinister elixir offers a fleeting week of perfection for every week spent in the decaying shell of one's true self. But the rules governing its use are as merciless as the industry it seeks to escape. The narrative centers on two facets of the same soul: the aging star Elisabeth, haunted by her fading glory, and her vibrant younger self, who calls herself Sue, a name that echoes with both hope and despair. Does Elisabeth Sparkle have her own symbiote? On the day she turned 50, once revered Hollywood starlet Elisabeth Sparkle found herself unceremoniously cast aside from the aerobics show that had once made her a household name. The producer, Harvey, coldly cited her age as the reason, his words echoing like a death knell in her mind. As she drove home, her gaze was drawn to a billboard featuring her own image being torn down, a haunting reminder of her fading glory. Distracted, she lost control of her car, crashing into the abyss of night. In the sterile confines of the hospital, a young male nurse hovered near her, his eyes fixated on her back with an unsettling intensity. He slipped her a flash drive, its label promising a miracle, the substance, a clandestine serum that could resurrect youth and beauty. After a restless night of contemplation, Elisabeth succumbed to temptation, ordering the serum and injecting the single-use activator. A chilling transformation began as a younger version of herself emerged from a gaping slit in her back, a grotesque rebirth that would forever alter her fate. In the shadowy depths of their existence, a grotesque bond forms between the two entities. Elisabeth is bound by a chilling obligation. Every 7 days, she must relinquish her consciousness to the other body, leaving it in a state of eerie slumber. The dormant form, now a mere vessel, craves sustenance in the form of daily injections of a viscous stabilizer fluid, siphoned from the original body through a spine-chilling lumbar puncture, lest it wither away into nothingness. This other self, who adopts the name Sue, swiftly ascends to prominence, snatched up by Harvey to fill Elisabeth's shoes. Her new television venture catapults her into the limelight, culminating in her selection to host the network's grand New Year's Eve spectacle. While Sue revels in a life of audacious indulgence, a sinister transformation occurs when she slips back into Elisabeth's skin, morphing into a shadowy recluse, haunted by insecurities that gnaw at her very essence. In the dim light of dawn, after a night steeped in reckless abandon, Sue siphons off additional stabilizer fluid from Elisabeth, eager to prolong their carnal escapade. As the sun rises, Elisabeth stirs, only to discover her index finger has aged unnaturally, a grotesque reminder of the night's indulgence. Panic sets in as she dials the supplier, who delivers a chilling warning. Lingering in Sue's form beyond 7 days leads to irreversible decay of her true self. The clock is ticking, and Elisabeth must adhere to the switching schedule to stave off this fate. Yet as the days drag on, the two halves of her soul begin to fracture, each viewing the other with growing contempt. Elisabeth, consumed by envy, loathes Sue's effortless allure and triumphs, while Sue recoils at Elisabeth's spiraling self-hatred and compulsive eating. The tension escalates until, after a particularly harrowing binge, a fractured Sue makes a chilling decision. She hoards stabilizer fluid in glass jars, her mind twisted with resolve, vowing to forsake Elisabeth entirely and embrace her new identity as Sue forever. 3 months had crawled by, and the eve of the New Year's telecast loomed ominously. Sue stood in her dimly lit lab, panic clawing at her throat as she discovered the last remnants of stabilizer fluid had vanished, drained from Elisabeth's body. The supplier's voice echoed in her mind, chilling her to the bone. The only way to restore the fluid was to revert to her original form. As they switched, Elisabeth felt a grotesque transformation seize her, contorting her into a nightmarish hunchback, a twisted reflection of her former self. In a desperate bid to halt Sue's relentless abuse of her essence, Elisabeth concocted a serum, a lethal promise to end Sue's reign. Yet as the syringe hovered above her skin, the intoxicating allure of admiration pulled her back, and she hesitated, choosing to revive Sue instead. This fateful decision shattered their delicate balance, awakening both forms to a shared consciousness. The moment Sue's eyes fell upon the nearly empty syringe, fury ignited within her. In a frenzied rage, she unleashed a torrent of violence upon Elisabeth, leaving her lifeless on the cold floor, before striding out to claim the spotlight of the New Year's special, oblivious to the darkness that now enveloped them both. Ending explained. What happened to Elisabeth? Sue's existence begins to unravel in the absence of Elisabeth. Panic-stricken, she races back to her apartment, desperate to concoct a new version of herself, using the remnants of the forbidden activator serum. The result is a nightmarish fusion of Elisabeth and Sue, a grotesque mockery of life. Clad in an improvised mask fashioned from a painting of Elisabeth in her prime, she limps onto the stage for the live broadcast. As she begins to address the audience, the mask slips away, revealing her horrific transformation. The crowd gasps, then erupts into a frenzy of terror. A man, driven by primal fear, decapitates her, and her body showers the audience in a crimson deluge. What remains of her escapes the chaos, collapsing into a grotesque heap of viscera. From this morbid pile, Elisabeth's original face detaches, crawling toward her neglected star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She gazes up at the stars, a smile creeping across her lips as she hallucinates the adoration of a crowd. But the illusion shatters, and she melts into a pool of blood. The following day, a floor scrubber methodically cleans the remnants of horror from the stage. Viewed by the masses as a creature of horror, Sue is driven to escape the New Year's spectacle. But her flight is short-lived, as her body succumbs to an agonizing collapse, disintegrating into nothingness. This sorrowful twist in the narrative leaves Sue effectively dead, while Elisabeth is left as a mere visage, her time dwindling. This metamorphosis starkly illustrates the darker aspects of both Elisabeth and Sue, which have grown more pronounced throughout the film, their physical forms now mirroring the monstrous decisions they've made. Yet the film does not revel in this transformation. Instead, it casts them as tragic, pitiable souls, evoking a sense of deep sorrow rather than horror.
Smile!
What happened to Sue? A central theme in The Substance revolves around the enigmatic company's relentless attempts to persuade Elisabeth to perceive Sue as merely an extension of her own being. Yet, as the narrative unfolds, a sinister shift occurs. Elisabeth and Sue begin to see each other as adversaries, locked in a fierce struggle for dominion over the same existence. This growing hostility escalates until Sue, defying ominous warnings of the consequences, chooses to seize control, leaving Elisabeth a mere shadow of her former self, haggard and broken. When Elisabeth finally wrests back her autonomy, her first instinct is to eliminate Sue. Yet the horror of her own actions and the weight of her ego compel her to spare her younger counterpart. But upon awakening, Sue is devoid of such compassion, ultimately delivering the fatal blow to Elisabeth. This pivotal moment starkly illustrates Elisabeth's complete loss of control over her desires and self-worth, as her younger self becomes the instrument of her own demise. In the grand scheme, this act seals Sue's fate. Without Elisabeth to provide the vital serum for her survival, she rapidly deteriorates. Thematically, by obliterating her true self and seizing full control, Sue ignites her own destruction, morphing into the film's ultimate monstrosity. So this was for today's folks. See you in our next video. Till then, bye-bye and take care.
What the heck, I'll laugh anyway.